Welcome to Across Africa, our weekly roundup of stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and coming up, a generation is at risk because of the alarming malnutrition rates caused by the instability that's followed a spike in jihadist attacks across the Sahel. The World Food Programme says that the world doesn't yet grasp the extent of the humanitarian emergency. Also, on Women's Entrepreneurship Day, I spoke to a Nigerian powerhouse. Chioma Ude has been running the African International Film Festival for 9 years now and has just ventured into the creation of an ambitious TV streaming platform. And South African cartoonist Zapiro was awarded one of France's highest honours. The 61-year-old artist's political drawings won him the Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres for his contribution to international culture. But first, the UN's raised the alarm about the devastating impact that an increase in extremist violence across the Sahel has had on food security in the region. The World Food Programme's warned that more than 2.4 million people across Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso don't have enough to eat. Burkina Faso has been particularly badly hit. It only saw its first major jihadist attack in 2016. 700 people have died since, and nearly 500,000 been forced from their homes. Malnutrition rates amongst the displaced have been described as staggering. Laurent Berstecker has more.
Forced to flee his home village after it was attacked by armed groups, Sawadogo Usman left everything behind. The former farmer and his family now live in this refugee camp in northern Burkina Faso. Far from their fields and their livestock, they often have no choice but to forage for leaves and roots to feed themselves.
What we need now is food. Everything else can wait. Once we get food, then we will worry about clothes.
Like Usman and his family, more than 850,000 people are currently displaced in the Sahel region, with more than half hailing from Burkina Faso. According to the UN's World Food Programme, the crisis has been partly driven by massive droughts caused by climate change, but mostly by growing violence in the region, which has seen attacks by armed groups surge in recent months. The United Nations say urgent action is required to prevent the situation in the Sahel from spiraling out of control.
As we speak, millions of people are desperately hungry in the Sahel. Hundreds of thousands of people are being displaced. Thousands of people are being killed because of extremism and violence. This is a catastrophe, and we've got to act, and we've got to act now.
The World Food Programme has already fed over 2.6 million people this year in the Sahel, but the organization says this is far from enough and has called for increased funding to provide urgent food aid to another 2.5 million individuals currently at risk of famine.
Well, about a year and a half ago, South Africa tried to stem the booming trade around illicit mining by giving 800 permits to formerly unlicensed operations. The project was launched in the diamond mines of Kimberley, but has backfired somewhat. Miners who weren't included in the scheme have been attacking infrastructure and rivals. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
This is the largest man-made hole on Earth. It's in Kimberley in South Africa, which is known as the diamond capital. 18 months ago, more than 800 illegal miners were licensed and given the right to work here. The government said this would limit black market trade and bring in tax revenue. But many informal miners, known as Zama-Zamas, were not included in the project, and they are now targeting the legal miners.
The problem that we are encountering now, it is from other Zama-Zamas. The other Zama-Zamas, when they come here, because they are not registered, they want to enter this field with force. They came here with the weapons, others came here with firearms.
The head of the mining company said his business might have to close down because the violence carried out by those who remain illegal miners was costing him too much.
We have literally fired many thousand rounds of rubber bullet shotgun rounds to keep the illegal miners off our property on a regular basis, and our fences are continuously being ripped out, removed, or just destroyed.
Another problem here is that the diamonds in the area of Kimberley are expected to run out in about 5 years. Analysts say there are tens of thousands of informal miners across South Africa. According to the International Labour Organization, up to 20% of the world's diamonds are dug up by illegal miners.
Well, Kenya has banned the sale of several top brands of corn flour because they may contain dangerously high levels of aflatoxin. It's produced by a nearly undetectable fungus and can be deadly. The risks are particularly high in a country where maize is a staple. The last crisis like this, back in 2004, saw 125 people die before it was brought under control. Our correspondents report.
Every day, Celestine prepares ugali, a puree of corn that she and her 5 children eat with each meal.
We say that it is important to eat ugali because it makes us very strong.
5 flour brands contaminated with aflatoxin were pulled from the shelves last week after tests showed unsafe levels of this toxic fungus, which can cause cancer, stunting, or rapid death in cases of high consumption.
I was afraid when I saw on TV that they said the brand I used wasn't fit for consumption, so I stopped cooking it.
In grocery stores in Nairobi, tainted packages are gone and merchants have had to restock quickly.
Some customers told me they couldn't eat the flour that I sold them, that it was forbidden. So I stopped selling it. I bought flour of better quality so I could keep making money.
The banned brands are widely sold across Kenya, and with dozens of maize products, there's confusion about what's safe. The fungus is invisible, but it contaminates maize at every step of production. This institute conducts research to improve the staple crop.
We talked about natural genetic resistance. The second is biocontrol. The third is to educate farmers about good agronomic practices. That includes proper way of managing the soil fertility and proper way of preventing the fungus to enter into the plants.
The toxin is found globally, but grows particularly well in Kenya's climate. Some maize samples tested here contained up to 8 times the healthy limit.
Well, November the 19th marked Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Africa is the only region in the world where more women than men set out to start their own business, despite facing difficulties in accessing capital and training. One woman who's successfully navigated these hurdles is Nigeria's Chioma Ude. She founded the African International Film Festival a decade ago, runs a film training institute, and has just launched an ambitious TV streaming service called Envivo. I asked her whether she thought her gender ever got in the way of her ambitions.
We're in Africa, and so it's quite the man's world here. Things are changing, I'll tell you that, but it's still such a struggle, especially with accessing finance and just your everyday being.
And how do you overcome that?
I am steadfast, tenacious, and I just keep going. More times than none, you get people say no to you, but you have to try again. After a while, they kind of get tired of hearing you come back at them, and they listen. So if you stay on long enough, they'll hear you out as a female. But times are changing, especially in Nigeria. At least that's where I am. Times are changing for women. There are more women in higher positions now than 10 years ago.
Well, you are one of the women in the country that's really at the forefront of that change, particularly when it comes to the entertainment industry. You've just wrapped up a week of the Africa International Film Festival, its 9th edition, and also you've just launched this TV streaming platform called Envivo. So tell us a bit about what it is and why you saw a need for it.
In running the festival, I always had such wonderful short films. They were great that had no where to go to but YouTube. So the first thought for me for Envivo was getting shots to a platform that would be monetized and be seen in a very strategic manner. The second was having a distribution platform for our film.
And finally, do you have any advice for any other, particularly African women who might be thinking about striking out on their own?
Yes, I would say to the women in Africa to be strong. We're normally very strong anyway and resilient. And whenever people say no to you, come back. You have to For a man in Nigeria, you go 2 times and they listen. For a woman, you have to go 10 times.
Chioma Ude there. Now, South African cartoonist Zapiro has been awarded one of France's highest honours for his contribution to international culture. The 61-year-old, real name Jonathan Shapiro, was handed the Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres.
Zapiro is proud of his old cartoons and keeps hold of everything in his studio. He wasn't even 30 when this poster made him famous.
It really was the beginning of everything for me because it was actually a cartoon that was trying to show the most exciting parts of being involved in the movement, the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s. The police, you'll see, and the security police are drawn as pigs. They came looking for me, and the first question they asked me was, why do you draw us as pigs? I said, I draw what I see. And then they put me into solitary confinement.
He went on to publish 28 books, caricaturing all of South Africa's political leaders, Nelson Mandela being his favorite.
It just suddenly came to me to use his face as the sun, the first new dawn. And I did. I mean, I used him as the sunrise here on the 27th of April, and later I used the image again.
The artist had a good relationship with Mandela, but subsequent presidents have been less appreciative of his humor. Jacob Zuma hates being portrayed with a shower over his head.
He was charged with rape. They asked him what he did after so-called consensual sex with somebody HIV positive. He said he had a shower. Why? To lessen his chance of infection. So immediately I thought, I will put a shower in his head. It became bigger than I could possibly imagine.
Despite multiple cases of legal action, Zapiro has never been put off. He continues to call out abuse in post-apartheid society.
You know, sometimes people even ask me if I could work in another country. I actually have done that. Cartoonists are more transportable than people imagine.
From sport to economics, Zapiro is never short of ideas. For South Africans, he's one of the most influential people in the country.
Well, that's it for Across Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.